We are recording with Bill Arkin, who's been on here several times before. And one of the books of yours that I cannot recommend highly enough is The Generals Have No Clothes. I think it is brilliant. It's there's about 10 books I recommend, and that is one of the 10. I'm not kissing your ass. There's video evidence of it. It is what it is. I think it's one of the best books out there. Up there with it's very similar to David Vine's Base Nation, and that will be in the description, as will be your Twitter and all of your other books, all of which are fucking great. But today's episode is going to be about UFOs, why the sudden disclosure, why the sudden gung-ho-ness of the government and the military industrial intelligence apparatus, and that kind of odd line that for some reason is not headline news every night, that quote, "We have recovered craft not of this world," which I feel like should be nonstop news on every screen on the planet 24/7, but it's in one ear out the other. But your thoughts?
Well, it should be front page news if it's true, but it's not true.
Okay.
So let's explain a little bit about whistleblowers first, and then second, talk about the government's interest in UFOs. Because I'll be the first to say, if there are aliens among us, I want to know them and I want to shake their hands and I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to know that, if we think that there are aliens who are going to come to Earth, I would rather have a welcoming committee than a planetary defense system. And there's nothing I can say about UFOs that's going to change anybody's mind, right? Did we have all sorts of secret programs in the 1940s and 50s and then going on until today that were looking at UFOs? Yes. Did we want to associate them with aliens and alien worlds? Yes, we did. But now we know a lot of the Cold War history, and a lot of the Cold War history makes it clear that lots of things were up there in the skies that the Pentagon was keeping secret. Weather balloons, as an example, or stealth craft, or high altitude craft such as the U-2. And people were seeing things and the government wasn't saying anything. So you put two and two together and you get five. And I think that is the actual history. And even there have been some pretty rigorous studies done trying to explain unexplained phenomena. I think the Air Force's Blue Book study essentially concluded in the end that 70% of the reported sightings of UFOs turned out to be coincident with U-2 flights in the same area. And one of the reasons was, in the olden days, the U-2 flew at about 60,000 feet, which was, twice as high as commercial airliners. And there was something about the way that the U-2 caught the light that often created a flash. And people would report this flash at an incredibly high altitude, and it became UFOs. Well, it's not to say that the public affairs people in the Pentagon at that time connected it to the U-2 operations, because they themselves didn't know about the U-2
Yeah.
operation. And so you can see how, by Peter not talking to Paul, we have a situation where all of a sudden people felt affirmed in their seeing things that were not explained to them by the Pentagon, the very definition of UFO. And this went on for a good decade or so before it just became a part of the lore of America. And then other things were detected in other parts of the world, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait, you mean UFOs are also interested in visiting Africa or visiting somewhere else? How dare they? But it kind of told the story of the fact that there was a lot of unexplained phenomena out there, and a lot of it was explained by Cold War secrecy. What changed was in the last few years, Navy pilots and other pilots in the military reported that they had seen UFOs, or we call them, or they call them the UAPs today, unidentified aerial phenomena. And Congress got interested in their claims and forced the Pentagon to create a new task force to deal with this, investigate it. And that task force, as is the case with most of these, what are we going to call them? Weird science task forces, uh, started to collect information, and some of that information began to leak out, and then one thing led to another. And guess what is the most important element of all of this? Is that it's a money-making machine.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, Senator Harry Reid is trying to get money for his cronies in Nevada to be able to study UFOs. And through that, we came upon an operation that was actually going on in Nevada, where a company called Bigelow Aerospace, which was involved in a secret project for the Air Force that I'll talk about in a second, got 20 million or so from this slush fund to be a part of the aerial phenomena, unexplained aerial phenomena idea. And that's where these whistleblowers come out of. They come out of that Bigelow world. I'm not saying they worked for Bigelow, but they come out of that world. And so let's put that aside for a moment. There's another part of it too, which is called foreign materiel exploitation, FME. Mm-hmm. And foreign materiel exploitation is been a long-term objective of the Pentagon, once an incredibly important secret operation to obtain Russian MiGs and Russian military equipment, later Chinese military equipment, Russian arms that were in the possession of others. In fact, I remember when I was in the Army in about the 75 time frame, 1975, that was way before you were born, that there was an opportunity to go down to, I think it was to go down to Grafenwehr in Germany. I was stationed in Berlin to get orientation on T-64 tanks, which had been obtained from the Egyptians after the Arab-Israeli War of 1973. So they obtained a bunch of Soviet tanks, and some of them were brought to Germany for intelligence analysts like me to be able to climb over and look at, etc. I remember that Danny Graham, who was the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency at the time, after getting into one of these tanks, said that you have to be a 4-foot-tall left-handed midget in order to drive one, because the habitability elements weren't very impressive. So there was this big program, foreign material exploitation, and that program went around the world looking at weird stuff that had crashed, or things that landed, or, well, basically anything that they could get their hands on that might give them insights into the status of Russian technology and capabilities. So that was a very active program, still is today. I think it works under the code name Chuckwagon. And these guys were involved in this foreign material exploitation, special teams that were sent out to Tibet or northern Pakistan or whatever, when a Soviet missile went off course, or when a Soviet reconnaissance balloon crashed, or when a Soviet reconnaissance plane crashed, to recover the materiel. Now, how that turned into, and we recovered some material that was not of human origin, is like where the weirdness comes into this story. And I imagine that there might have been some technology that they got their hands on that they were unfamiliar with, that maybe they had never seen or had never previously exploited. But the material that was recovered was eventually sent on to the National Air and Intelligence Center, which at the time was in Dayton, Ohio. Today it's called the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. And that's kind of the technical intelligence repository for the US government. It's where the best technical analysts exist, and they look at the technical elements of adversary weapons and capabilities. So you have like all of these little pieces of intelligence operations and collection and unexplained phenomena colliding together into this story that somehow got some credibility in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, well, some of this material was, not from the Earth. It's like, well, okay, maybe there were comets or asteroids or pieces of asteroids that landed, and it was like, we don't know what this element is.
Yeah.
But this is the long game of telephone that has started in Roswell in 1947 that has gotten us to today, where people are once again asking, oh my God, we need to do more research on this. The government needs to tell us the truth. I mean, so let's like put it in the same basket as the Kennedy assassination, where the government still doesn't release all the files and the conspiracies continue to grow, and they're periodically revived. Well, I would put UFOs in that same group, that essentially we can never have the answer to unexplained phenomena because it's unexplained.
Yeah.
And the government has no credibility because it's been hiding behind this secrecy for now more than 50 years. And nobody believes the news media anyhow. So you've got this confluence, which includes also now, of course, money, because what will Congress want to do with this latest revelation? Well, somebody's going to want to say, let's spend money to investigate what it is that these people are talking about. And the whistleblower, don't know him, haven't talked to him, is going to enjoy his 15 minutes of fame and the limelight, and he's going to claim, oh, there's all sorts of secrets I know that you don't know, and it's probably true because he comes out of the weird world. But people are really taking 1 and +1 and making 3, and this is a problem of government secrecy. This is a problem of secret operations. Think about it today. Think about it just from our point of view. So the United States flies a couple of known stealth craft, right? One is the X-37 space plane,
yeah,
which goes up there and exists for a year before it lands again. And it's like, has anybody ever explained what is it doing?
No, it just lands. They go out in
Yeah.
hazmat suits and they go, it was up in space for 1,000 days. We go, what did it do? And they go, well,
Yeah.
it did fascinating things. We're like, well,
Yeah.
thanks.
We have a stealth drone, a long range drone, the RQ-170,
Yeah.
and I heard rumor that there's an RQ-180 as well. And it became famous a few years ago when one of them crash landed in Iran, and Iran showcased it, etc. But it's up there every day. It's up there every day, and so are people in China or Russia seeing unexplained phenomena that might have similar kinds of glint of the sun, or be seen under some circumstances, or be seen when it's taking off or landing, depending upon what its glide path is? And and where it's flying from. I mean, we don't even know where it's flying from, but my guess is that we probably have these stealth drones flying from forward areas like Okinawa or Diego Garcia, places that are somewhat remote, but where the U.S. operates air bases. And so we know that we have our own stealth objects up there, and it would be silly for us not to believe that the Russians and the Chinese have the same thing. So, so, so yes, there's a lot of unexplained aerial phenomena. A lot of it is mostly unexplained to the public, but because of secrecy and compartmentation, there are a lot of people in the military who don't know about it. A lot of people in the intelligence community. I mean, this is the very nature of secrecy, right? I might work right directly with you, but there may be things that I am privy to that you're not privy to, and that's the story of excessive secrecy. So go ahead and shoot at me and try to uh, uh, ask me questions, but that's my basic position.
Well, I tend to agree with you because
Well, that's no.
no, it's not. But hey, don't get me wrong. I want it to be an alien craft that crashed out in Roswell in '47, and we've been reverse engineering it, and that it's all black ops shit. But when you see something like it's like the Tic Tac, right? '04 Nimitz, the very fact that it's been openly discussed to me itself is just that is and I want it to be true. I want there to be some unexplained I had on Charlie Duke from Apollo 16, and I asked him, I was like, is there anything on the moon? And he was like, no. I'm like, just lie to me, tell me you saw fucking aliens there. But he was just like, no, it's and but when you look at the Tic Tac, and it's going over the U.S. That carrier strike group. I tend to think that is almost like a red cell experiment. What better way to test a new craft's capabilities than to fly over presumably the best navy, which would be our own, and that's the best way to do it. You could get it would be like a double blind placebo effect. You could have every angle. You could see what they say about it. Was it detectable from the Spy 1 radar? And not only that, I mean, by calling them UFOs, isn't that a great deniability option? If a war, when's the last time we've had a near peer competitor other than China kind of bullying up on Taiwan? Now we have Russia that seems to be pairing with China. What better way to start prepping the public for some wild, out of this world skunk work shit than to kind of start seeding into the public consciousness UFOs and crazy metamaterials and things that don't obey what we presume to be the laws of physics? Man, that seems like a pretty good cover. Wow, that weird craft struck Beijing. It's a shame those aliens did that. It wasn't us. Why wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, I think you do raise an interesting question, which is, what are the technologies that are out there today that have not been publicly revealed?
Yes.
Okay, so stealth emerged operationally from the 1980s. The stealth fighter was first used in Panama in 1909, and then sort of became the star of the 1990 Gulf War. But when that's 40 years ago, and now 40 years ago, that's 50 years ago. And now we really haven't had a new significant changing technology that has emerged since then. I guess the one that I might point to that say it's completely new is hypersonic missiles. And so imagine for a moment, I mean, we know kind of what the hypersonic weapons are that the Army, Navy, and the Air Force are developing. We've heard a lot about the Russian ones. In fact, they've shot a couple in the Ukraine. And we know that the Chinese are also active in the hypersonic world. So are there now flights going on, even intercontinental flights that are testing hypersonic vehicles, extremely fast, maybe stealthy? Probably. And I'm going to say, as somebody who follows the national security world, that that undoubtedly there are secret things out there, and that's going to add more fuel to the fire, especially as China really does technologically catch up with the United States now. So to me, it's a nice confluence because it's relevant, which is to say that people there's a lot of conspiracy believers out there, and people are distrustful of the government, distrustful of Washington. Is sort of that to me is the core problem in American society today, and whistleblowers always have like a gain a lot of favor in the news media and in Congress. Congress always wants to throw money at its cronies and its friends. And what is more lucrative than unidentified phenomena? Hey, I want to study that. Give me $20 million. I'm going to study unexplained phenomena as well. So all of these things are kind of coming together. I don't think there's anything particularly new about what's happening now. I'm imagining that these Navy pilots who have reported seeing things are either seeing, as you explained, some kind of red cell operation, or even an unintentional operation where it's in the area where their carriers are operating or where they're flying. But it could also be Chinese in origin. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't dismiss that altogether. What I do dismiss, I'm sad to say, is that they're not aliens from another planet who have traveled millions of light years to come to Earth, and after traveling millions of light years with their advanced technologies, just happened to crash when they got to our planet.
They're shit
Uh,
faced.
well, exactly. Or so happy that they found somebody
Yeah.
who believed in them because, on their way, they watched all the UFO movies. So,
They
uh,
one idea I like to yeah, on the whole aliens from another planet, I just tend to think that they would be so unimaginably advanced that the very idea of a craft itself is our own primitive projection. Like it
oh,
could
yeah.
be some weird electron entanglement, instantaneous teleportation, and they could be cloaked in different spectrums we don't even know exist. I mean, they could be, they could be here right now. It would be like someone from the Revolutionary War trying to predict the B-21 Raider. Like, dude, they're not coming in ships with wigs. It's like it's a stealth bomber. They'd be like, "What is a bomber?" We'd be like, "Oh fuck, this is 150 years before the Wright brothers." Like, you
Yeah.
know, that's what I think it would be. And
Yeah.
one idea I do like though is couldn't this just be, if we accept the Cold War for what it is, the first world nations using second world nations using third world nations, just this puppet kind of layered thing of proxy wars. Why couldn't it go one more step up? Why couldn't you have some foreign, solar or galactic power seeding things? Why couldn't you seed, develop? If you're looking at like 1,000-year time frames, like why couldn't you seed the United States? We just won World War II. They're probably like, hey, well, that's the horse to back. Maybe you flick down a little piece of advanced information. You just throw down the Roswell craft. You're like, let's see what they do with it. They just detonated a nuke. Let's see what these fuckers do with it. I mean, why couldn't they be watching us like we watch those uncontacted tribes in the Amazon? I don't know. Throw an iPhone to them. See what they do.
uh, why couldn't? But the reality is,
Yeah.
it's not the case. So to me, like the issue that we need to deal with the most is secrecy,
Yeah.
because somewhere in the back of my mind, I feel the catechism that I have to utter, which is that there are certainly some things that deserve to be secret.
Yeah.
But I don't really believe it. I don't really believe it. And um, I understand that technology I understand the impulse of the Pentagon to want to keep technologies secret, capabilities secret. And in some funny way, that task is becoming even more essential today. Because when you look at an airplane or you look at a missile, it's not just a physical object. It's a collection of computer impulses, of microchips working in unison, and there's electrical connections. And if there are electrical connections, if there are computers speaking to each other in these craft, if they are actual emanations, then increasingly in the world of electronic warfare and cyber warfare, planners believe that they can interrupt those electronic signals. And I've heard some fantastic stories of people saying that we can even interfere with the guidance system of a missile and push it off course, or we can we're getting to the place where we can actually get inside the computer system of an airplane or whatever. So the era of what's called non-lethal warfare, of warfare without the physical object being the key, but more the brain being the key, is either upon us or it's not far away. And in that war, I think it's essential that the public understands the risks involved in those capabilities, because we have nukes, they have nukes. And if our system of warfare becomes so efficient that it doesn't matter that they have nukes anymore, because they can't deliver them to us, and so therefore deterrence doesn't work anymore.
Mm.
Then we're heading towards a world in which the potential for the use of nuclear weapons increases, not decreases.
Yeah.
And I think that in discussing unexplained phenomena, the issue that should capture people's attention is there so much going on in this clandestine world that it has the potential to be a spark that might escalate to world war or to nuclear war. Like, are we doing things out there, or are they doing things out there that has the potential to create crises or misunderstanding or whatever? Think of the missile that landed in Poland last November, right? And everybody was ready to declare NATO declaring war on Russia because it had attacked Poland, and it turned out to be a Ukrainian surface-to-air missile that went awry. Now, the U.S. intelligence community was pretty quick to identify that, and because of good relations with Poland, it was able to convince Poland that this was indeed a Ukrainian missile long before the news media caught up, which in our day means 12 hours later. Well, that should be an incident that tells us that, Jesus, shit can really get out of control quickly. And we can really, we can really overstate the significance of different events. And I just say that problem is going to become worse in the coming years. There's more hypersonics and more maneuvering missiles and more loitering weaponry and more autonomy and artificial intelligence and et cetera becomes a part of the experimentation landscape of warfare, not even warfare. And I feel like our debate and understanding of what the implications of all of that are kind of gets submerged in the beauty of the UFO debate, in which there's a scene in the movie, the remade movie, The Color of Money, with Tom Cruise and Paul Newman. Tom Cruise is a pool shark, and he goes out there and he's basically beating everybody. And Paul Newman is trying to convince him that every once in a while you have to lose, kid. You have to lose because that's what makes you more valuable.
Mm.
And he says, because if you lose every once in a while, everyone goes home in a limousine. That's what he said. Everyone goes
Wow.
in a limousine. And we live in a society right now where the UFO story, hey, if I go to the news media to read it, somebody's going home in the limousine. And if you have a podcast about it, somebody's going home in a limousine. And if Bigelow Aerospace gets money for it, then somebody goes home in a limousine. And if Congressman P or Y gets more votes for it, then somebody goes home in a limousine. And everybody benefits. And that's the danger of the UFO debate in an immediate sense. But the ultimate danger is that we don't pay attention to the actual technologies that are out there that might undermine strategic stability and ultimately lead to the possibility of a nuclear war.
I've been thinking a lot since the invasion of Ukraine that I wonder if our seeming kind of cockiness of just throwing money at Ukraine, just do whatever, take whatever steps you need. I wonder if there's been some breakthrough in SDI or orbital defense or quantum computing cracking the guidance system. Is there some, have we found a bulletproof vest? And that is wildly destabilizing because you want mutual assured destruction to work, right? You don't, when you get rid of that, all of a sudden you start to get a little cocky. Oh, you got a gun? Me and Bill are about to duel. Yeah, but I just discovered Kevlar. Now I'm much more likely to duel and, start firing wildly. You don't want that. You want both people to feel like if I misstep, it's coming right back at me. I'm catching a thermonuclear warhead right to downtown Manhattan. And if that was discovered, on one hand, you do want that capability. If your job is to defend the United States, you do want that invincible shield. But you'd almost want no one to know about it aside from like 3 guys at NORAD, right? You would want people to think we don't have that shield and act accordingly, right?
Well, now you're raising the possibility of the great conspiracy that that the agency and the DoD would love it for everybody to be talking about UFOs and aliens, because that means they're not going to be talking about the things that they don't want to have
That too.
people. But I will remind you that in the U.S. military, that it's the U.S. military has been at war since 2001, pretty constant war, and it has and nobody would say that this is the reason for the war or even that it drove things, but it was a laboratory for the United States to test all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And really the greatest advances that have taken place have been the advances in intelligence collection. So much so that the Pentagon really embraces artificial intelligence because it doesn't have the ability to sort through all the crap that it can now collect. So we've been in a warfare laboratory for 20 plus years. The only thing that was missing was a peer competitor who utilized similar technology to ours, which then tested how these technologies actually do in a real conflict, not how they do against the Taliban.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're seeing in Ukraine. And I think that there are some shifts that are occurring in Ukraine that are interesting, and that will influence the development of the military in the future. Like clearly, long-range land-based missiles are big, and they're going to be big in the future. greater and greater precision on the part of artillery is big, and that's going to become bigger in the future. And there are some other technological phenomena that are also clear. I mean, one of the things that's so clear, and it's an irony of kind of contradicting everything that Washington believes, is that the Russians really suck at intelligence. I mean, they have not been able to have a bomb damage assessment, a BDA cycle that is useful. It takes them days, if not weeks, to assess the effect of an attack before they can figure out what they need to do to reattack if they're trying to destroy or disable something. They're very bad at seeing the entire battlefield, and they really don't understand a lot about the West, including the very supply routes that the West is using to get arms back into Ukraine and to the front lines. You've seen hardly any attacks by Russia on those supply routes. Well, guess what? It's because they don't know where they are, or they can't identify them in real time. Now, how is this possible, given that we made the KGB into Supermen in the Corps, and the FSB today is supposed to be just as capable, and the GRU, we hear it said almost every day in some Hollywood movie or whatever about the brilliant this or that. And the answer is because the Russians have really focused on human intelligence. They've really focused on the spy, the guy who penetrates the foreign government and steals the secret and transmits it back to Moscow. That's been their specialty. That's their specialty item. Well, what do the Washington experts say? Oh, we spend too much time on technical intelligence and not enough on human intelligence. We need to have more spies. We need to have more people on the ground who are able to tell us what Putin is thinking and what's going on. But the reality is that in warfare, in the actual war, the U.S. predominance in technical intelligence, in not human intelligence, but the technical intelligence, has really paid off.
Yeah.
That the casualty rates, the destruction of artillery, the destruction of armored vehicles. I mean, we're at extraordinary levels given today's inventories, and that's all facilitated by technical intelligence. So it kind of turns the whole picture of what is the future of intelligence on its head. Now, you can say, well, that's all fine and good during a war, and that's what it has been. Ukraine has been able to use that intelligence to great advantage. And then as we saw in the Ukraine documents that were leaked by Teixeira, that the U.S. has an extraordinarily high fidelity view of the battlefield. There is a problem, which is we know where every frickin' tank is and every emanation comes from, but we still don't know what Putin is thinking, and we still don't even know what the Ukrainians are thinking. And that is a problem in the overall conduct of the war. And a bigger problem exists, which is for all of this intelligence, which was fantastic at the technical level, we were not able to deter Vladimir Putin from invading in the first place. Like, wasn't that job one?
Yeah.
Right? It was almost and so again, like 9/11, for all of what you might say, 19 guys still were able to come up with a diabolical plot to essentially give America the biggest bloody nose that it has ever received. So there has to be a balance between technical and human. There has to be a balance, but more importantly, there has to be a balance in our own thinking, which is that we have to look at intelligence and secret operations and secrecy from the point of view of, are we achieving the goal that the public expects? If Joe Biden comes out and says, I can tell you that Putin is about to invade Ukraine and they're going to do a really bad thing and it's going to happen on Tuesday, and yet the United States doesn't have any leverage or power to stop that, then we have to ask ourselves, what is the value of our nuclear weapons? What is the value of the military as we currently have it formed? Why don't we have stronger diplomacy? Why don't we have more risk-taking? And so here we are now 16 months later, and we're doing fantastically in helping Ukraine on the battlefield. And though a lot of people think Russia is winning, Ukraine is kicking ass. Um, uh, but the question of global changing things, right? 100 years from now, the Ukraine war is going to be, oh, the Ukraine war. You know, it's going to be like the
Yeah.
Franco war. I mean, people will vaguely remember what it was about, whatever the outcome is. But what people will remember is if there's a nuclear war, or if Russia implodes, or if China and Russia and Brazil and India and other countries become the new superpowers of the future. That's what they will remember. And it feels to me like we are really bad at influencing that future. We are super good at identifying that that's the T-72 Mod 2 version 7, and that it's located at this exact coordinate down to like the second level. But we're not very good at thinking in a bigger way. And the more that we give over intelligence to Hollywood, the more that we believe that the intelligence capabilities are what you see in the movies, or what you read about bullshit stuff about UFOs, the more that we are not realistically seeing our intelligence community and understanding our own failings and our own weaknesses. And so, I would hope that beyond Hollywood, that we would have some ability to say to ourselves that maybe the biggest lesson of the Ukraine war is that nuclear weapons get in the way, and they are actually objects that force us into bruising and destructive conventional wars. Not that we should have more nukes, but that they don't really work. And because then they don't really work, one has to ask, why do we have them? So, so to me, I look at all of this and I kind of connect it all together. But in the end, it comes back to the basic thesis, which I laid out in The Generals Have No Clothes, which is that we can war for 20 years. And nobody really in the end says, what have we achieved? Like, what did we gain? And we can then have people in positions of high power, Lloyd Austin, retired general, as the Secretary of Defense, and never ask ourselves, what the fuck did Lloyd Austin ever do? I mean, what battle did he win? What war did he win? I mean, what makes this guy any better than you at determining what our national security policies should be, right? And yet we defer to the generals in an unhealthy way in our society, just like we defer to the whistleblowers in an unhealthy way in our society, because the truth is out there. It's just not very spectacular.
As Terrence McKenna said, the real struggle in life is not finding the answer, it's facing the answer. And we know exactly where the tank is. We've got 8K resolution. All right, so how are we stopping China's burgeoning economy in 50 years? Well, we know exactly where their runways are. Yeah, that's not the question I asked. I think the answer is the military can only do so much. Ultimately, you do have to have a core engine of the United States. You have to have education and standard of living, and that's the very thing that makes people want to come here, and that makes it attractive and makes it worth defending. But you can't get $1 trillion contract from Raytheon unless Raytheon starts building our schools, in which case, I'll shut up. But I think that's the answer, is that you have to build up a robust society worth defending and worth coming to.
Well, and a robust society that is also a counterweight to the military-industrial complex, which I've never been a fan of focusing on the money or the military industrial complex. I've always felt that there was a phenomena that if you tell me that a weapon doesn't work or is not good enough or isn't the right one, all the military industrial complex says is, well, cut us another check and we'll make it the right one. We'll make it work. We'll make it better. Like that's the solution set in that debate. But increasingly, when I look at Ukraine, where we've had terrific devastation and probably at this point close to a couple of 100,000 people have died. I've always I gotta say to myself, I would be dishonest if I didn't say that the Raytheons of the world are making money from this.
Oh,
And
that's the thing that I think everyone knows deep down.
yeah, not that they drive it,
Sure.
not that they caused it, not that they even promote it, but in the end, as we move on to another 1,000 missiles or another 1,000 rounds of ammunition, or more in case 1,000,000 rounds of ammunition, it's the defense industry and the defense complex that benefits. I mean, the rubble had barely fallen in Ukraine on the first few days of the war, when NATO was already saying we need to spend more money.
Yeah.
And they've committed themselves to spending 3% of GNP, and that's been a big shift for countries like Germany and others that weren't spending that amount of money. But the lesson I learned from the Ukraine war is the Russians are a paper tiger. And they don't threaten Europe anymore because they've been devastated as a result of this war. And they have to go back to the drawing boards and figure out whether or not the Russian way of war is even relevant anymore. This is a country on their border.
Yeah.
That they haven't been able to move more than, I think they've moved 30 miles since last year. 30 miles. That's the distance from Severodonetsk, which was taken in July 2022, to Bakhmut.
Jeez. Yeah,
That's
that ain't
30 miles. Okay. So we're talking about a war that's being fought at the platoon level, not a war that's being fought at the army level. And so with this vast expenditure of arms, in which nobody's hair is mussed in the United States, right? I mean, Raytheon in Arizona or Lockheed Martin in Texas or whatever, they're just rolling merrily along. And the Pentagon is rolling merrily along. And yes, there's a few thousand troops that have been sent to Poland and to Germany, and there are aircraft in the air doing all of what the United States does. But we haven't really been affected by this war, other than, unfortunately, I hate to say it, profiting from it.
And I think that, in a dark way, this is just the next evolution of the military industrial complex. We learned from the war on terror. Like, hey, they don't sure, it's a big step up from Vietnam, 50,000 deaths to roughly 5,000, 58 to 7.5. The next step is, hey, man, if we just don't send any Americans over, they don't give a shit at all.
Well, and as we've seen in the relevance of drones at all levels in this war. So, in the American war on terrorism, drones were pretty relevant in terms of intelligence collection platforms, and certainly the Reaper and Predator drones that did the aerial assassinations were important as well. But here, they've become more of a fundamental element of strike, of artillery, of air power, and I think we are getting a little glimpse into robotic warfare or unmanned warfare. I mean, we are getting a little glimpse into it, and I think that we got to ask ourselves, what do we want in the future? What do we want? I mean, are we moving towards some Star Trek episode in which one computer fights against another computer, and when one computer wins, the planet surrenders? I mean, and how do we want to deal with that ethically? How do we want to deal with it strategically, etc.? So, well, I mean, it raises a lot of questions, and I guess in the end, I have to say, I hope the aliens will answer them for us, because we need their help.
Yeah.
Next time I'm abducted, I'll ask them to help.
Call in from the UFO next time and get me some goddamn views. But we got to wrap this one up. I got another show I got to jump to. But Bill, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, seriously, go grab The Generals Have No Clothes. Or speaking of drone warfare, go grab Unmanned. And I believe you correlate that with Gilgamesh, which is a unique synthesis. But thank you for your time, man. I love having you on. You're a brilliant individual. And I think that's the one thing we all kind of have to think about is, who's making money off of this, man. It's not zero sum. There's somebody losing.
And what? It's not me.
No, yeah, we're not making money. I mean, listen, Raytheon, start sponsoring me, and maybe I'll change the tune of my podcast. Maybe I'll start, being like, listen, we got to force the world is a chessboard, and we got to be able to say, hey, Boeing, start throwing me some stock options, and I'll stop having Bill on, and I'll start whatever you want me to say. I'll, buy me a penthouse. But
General will be the next guest.
Exactly. Dude, thank you so much for coming on. I love talking to you guys. Please go in the description. Please go grab his books. Please go follow him on Twitter. Please go to his website. Blah, 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 blah. Till next time, man. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.